Staying in South Africa, management consultancy Bain has been banned from government contracts in the United Kingdom for 3 years over its involvement in a South African corruption scandal. The government cited grave professional misconduct for the move. The firm said it was disappointed and surprised by the decision, but acknowledged it had made mistakes. The move follows a probe into allegations of widespread corruption during South Africa's former President Jacob Zuma's 9 years in power. The former president has been accused of placing the interest of corrupt associates ahead of those of his country in a type of corruption known as state capture. In the South African government's investigation, Bain was found to have had links with corruption in the country as part of his work for the National Tax Agency. Now, joining us this evening from South Africa to take a look at this story is Chris Hart, Executive Chairman of the Impact Investment Africa. He joins in from South Africa. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us on NC Continental Prime. Now, the United Kingdom government has banned Bain and Company for government contracts for 3 years, citing grave professional misconduct in the corruption allegation leveled against former President Jacob Zuma. Could you kindly enlighten us on the scope of this ban and the misconduct?
Well, I think the Zuma government was really characterized by the most unbelievable corruption, and the change in leadership in the ruling party, while welcomed and really gave a huge boost of confidence, has not really acted on the problems of state capture and the rampant corruption that happened previously. In fact, there's many instances where you say, has anything been done about corruption at all? There's been the prosecution program or individuals being brought to book have been very, very few and far between so far. It seems like this is really a snail's pace despite mountains and mountains of evidence. And the country really is hurting and reeling under that because the state capture really was rampant corruption. And that has really reverberated onto what we call investor confidence, because a big part of investor confidence is in fact trust. And trust has been broken in the system in terms of that. And there's going to be a lot of restoration that's needed. And part of it is to actually see, is the justice system back? It really originated just before the Jacob Zuma presidency started, when the National Prosecuting Authorities decided to drop the charges against Zuma, who was heading to become president of the ANC for political reasons. In other words, there was plenty of evidence to charge him. And the moment you did that, there was impunity at the top. And that basically has fed through the last several years. And so I think when one actually looks at the fact that the UK government has taken action, but the South African government has not taken action, is really indicative of the malaise that South Africa finds in that the systemic paralysis that you could say has incurred, where effectively the ruling party is not really prepared to implement major reforms to deal with the corruptions, because it's become an essential part of their meal ticket, if you like, for the individual players for that. So it's fighting corruption. Corruption fights back, unfortunately, because the stakes are too high. And we really sit with a problem there that the actual average South African is really struggling. We've got an unemployment rate of above 35%. This is in no small measure a huge contributing factor to this unusually high and catastrophic unemployment rate that South Africa faces, and the stagnant economy, because one cannot attract investment in a situation where there's no trust.
Now, Chris, according to multiple reports, it said that Bain had earned fees of upwards of £100 million in its work with multiple state institutions during this period. How do you think this may have affected the South African economy?
Well, the £100 million in the £100 million in the context of the size of the South African economy might not be big, but it's the actual, what did that fee actually do? And one of the fees is that Bain was complicit and assisted in the dismantling of SARS, the capability and capacity of SARS at the time, regarded as one of the most capable government departments at the end of their consulting with the, you could say, destroyer-in-chief Tom Moyani, ended up eviscerating the organisation, and with it the confidence in the organisation, of course, again with it the trust, and that has still not been fully repaired. The systems and processes are being restored at the moment with SARS, but at the end of the day, there is still a big trust factor that still needs to be fixed.
Now, Chris, you did mention some of the impact of corruption. We can't quantify it in this discussion. You mentioned 35% unemployment rate, and I guess this is one of the reasons why the Cyril Ramaphosa government did commission the Zondo inquiry to look into state capture. Its report is out now, and do you think, in order to prevent this sort of occurrence from happening in the future, that the recommendations of the Zondo Commission will be implemented by the government of President Cyril Ramaphosa? We do understand that it's also an ANC-led government.
Exactly. And to end state capture, you've got to end things like cadre deployment, for instance. That is still at the core of ANC policy. It's basically at the core of their central doctrine, if you like, which is really Stalinist in nature, of control over everything. So when we talk about state capture, it's about the ANC's control of the state. Not, in other words, it's not the concept in the UK of the loyal civil servant, regardless of which government is in place. But state capture comes with private sector capture, it comes with sports capture, it comes with church capture, schools capture. In other words, the whole underlying philosophy is, if you don't have control over it, it doesn't exist, because it is a challenge to the authority and power of the actual central government and in turn the ANC. And that's also not what's talked about. So to turn around state capture, that was part of the ANC policy right from the beginning, even under the Mandela government, but it just has been intensifying and really accelerated under the Zuma government to the point of, because it's politically driven appointment process in the civil servant, and we're increasingly seeing it in the private sector. You've got a distinct lack of capacity. In other words, an inept government, an incapable government that is really plaguing the country in terms of civil service delivery.
Thank you very much, Chris Hart, for your time. We do appreciate your insight. That was Chris Hart, Executive Chairman of Impact Investments Africa.